Hi everybody, Ali Akbarian, your resident road safety expert from Mobility Engineering, back again for another Q&A. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for sending in those questions. And the last thank you I want to give you is for hitting this subscribe button. That looks a little bit like my pillow down there under the screen. Please hit that button. We'd love your support to get us to that 1,000 subscriber mark. So please hit it. We've just crossed over 700 subscribers, so really excited for that. But keep hitting that button and let's get to 1,000. So today's question is around wheelchair accessible vehicles and clearance zones. So we are here at our ME training and assessment facility, trial and assessment facility, should I say, in Hornsby, around a wheelchair accessible Volkswagen Caddy, which is a very common vehicle in this market. So we've actually got two questions, and both are very similar. So I'm going to basically cover kind of the both in the one. First one is more of a generic question, and it's come from an OT, so thanks to the OTs out there. And it's basically saying they've prescribed a wheelchair accessible vehicle like this one. So basically what that is you've got a cutout in you've got a sort of a little minivan type vehicle, and you've got a cutout in the back of the van where you can bring your wheelchair up, like so. So this is what we're referring to as a wheelchair accessible van or vehicle. You also have things like Kia Carnivals, Renault Kangaroos, that kind of stuff. So this is what we're talking about. So what's happened is NDIS has come back and basically said, we need evidence that this particular Volkswagen Caddy and that customer are compliant with the relevant standards. And so they've asked, what are those relevant standards and what do they mean? Then the next person has asked a similar question, and it'll all come to light in a minute. I'll show you this photo as we come closer. They've basically taken a photo of someone and they've put a whole bunch of photos of them without their face, which is fine, and basically just showing you how they sit in the back. So they've put someone up there in their wheelchair and they've taken a whole bunch of photos and they've sent us the photos. And they've asked, is this okay? Is this compliant? Is this safe? Like is this okay? Can we put this in for NDIS? So both are asking around the compliance around the back of these vehicles. So what is the compliance and what are we looking at? There is a few levels of compliance. So the first highest level of compliance is the whole vehicle has to be compliant, right? So when we get a vehicle like this modified, we need to get a local engineer or a local road authority like Queensland Transport or like authority people or like an engineer person, mod plate person, to certify that this modification, this ramp and everything is in accordance with the standards. So if you've got that whole vehicle certification, pretty much you don't really need to worry too much, like unless you're like the engineer doing inspections, but as a user or as a customer, you don't really need to worry about the technicalities of that. You just need to make sure you've got that certificate and your vehicle is certified, right? But what they certify is the ramps. The ramps have to meet a certain standard. They also certify the restraints, and they all have to meet a standard, which we've covered restraints in many videos before. But the main thing that we really need to worry about with these vehicles is the clearance zone of the occupant. So generally speaking, we don't have problems with the compliance of the vehicles because, as I said, you get whole vehicle compliance. These vehicles are illegal to be on the road unless they are compliant. So non-compliant vehicles is not as common. But what is much more common is non-compliant passengers. So what do I mean by non-compliant passenger? When I put a wheelchair occupant in here, if they do not have the right clearance zones around their body, then they're going to be non-compliant and they're going to be traveling illegally. And this is a part which a lot of people aren't aware of. So there is an Australian standard AS 10542 that basically specifies what the clearance standards are. And when you are operating in this vehicle, when you're prescribing, when you're working with occupants in this vehicle, that standard is obligatory. We must consider that standard. And again, I'm going to come a bit closer to you, but what you will see is there is actually a diagram in that standard with the occupant in there, and it's got the rear minimum clearance that you need behind you in the shaded area, the front clear zone, and the height. And they've given you kind of like examples of what these maximums are depending on what kind of seatbelt you've got and so on. So basically there is a small section, it's about a half a section with a paragraph that explains to you what your clearance zones are, which are 650 millimeters if I've got a upper torso, or with the older vehicles, which is just the lap only, 950. So we need quite a fair bit of space in front of us. And to either side, we also need a bit of space as well, and that's the next diagram down. So I'm not going to go through the depths of the measurements because it can cause a bit of confusion, and we're not here to help people do assessments here. We're just here to give you information as to what to look for and where to look for it. So if I've got an occupant here, that's what I need to consider all those front clear zones, the head clear zones, and the top of the head, like we've had videos before about you need 100 mil on top of the head, those kind of things. So as long as we've got those right clearances, as per this standard, AS 10542, then we're compliant and we're all good. And it's not about the vehicle, it's actually about the occupant. All right, so hopefully that answers the question. Is there any, dimensional requirements for occupants? Yes, there is. The standard 10542 has all of it in there. I've just given you a little diagram of what we need to really look out for. Go to that section and find that there and do those measurements and you'll have a great time. Well, at least you'll figure out whether or not it's compliant. Maybe not a great time if it's not compliant, but that's a whole different story. All right, so thanks very much for tuning in. Thanks for sending in those questions. Keep those questions coming in and please hit that subscribe button and we'll see you next time.